The message hit me like a thunderbolt. Mom, you're too old to babysit the kids. I stared at my phone, disbelief washing over me as I read my daughter-in-law Claire's words. It wasn't just a rejection, it felt like a door slamming shut on the love I had always offered as a grandmother. This isn't just a story about age, it's about the heart-wrenching distance that can grow between family, and the unexpected moments that can bring us back together. Before we dive in, let us know where you're tuning in from, and don't forget to subscribe. Because tomorrow, we have something truly touching in store for you. The words hit me like a cold slap across the face. Mom, you're too old to babysit the kids. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling as I read the text from my daughter-in-law, Claire. It wasn't the first time she had pushed me away, but this message was different, blunt, dismissive, and final. I had always thought that being a grandmother meant being there, hands-on, ready to help when my son and his wife needed me. But Claire's words shattered that illusion in an instant. I remember the afternoon clearly. I had called to offer my services for the weekend, hoping to give Claire and my son, Mark, a break from the exhausting routine of childcare. After all, I had raised Mark and his sister with patience and love. I knew the struggles of sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. But the response I received was cold, clipped, and devoid of the warmth I had expected. Thanks, but we've hired someone younger. It's just easier that way. I sat there, phone in hand, feeling the sting not just of rejection but of invisibility. Too old, she said. Too outdated. My decades of experience, my willingness to help, were dismissed as if they were irrelevant. The woman who had once welcomed me into their home with open arms was now closing the door, brick by brick, around me. In the weeks that followed, the distance grew more palpable. I noticed subtle changes in family gatherings, Claire's polite but distant nods, the way she avoided inviting me to important events, the absence of my grandchildren's laughter when I was around. I watched from the sidelines as she entrusted their care to young, paid sitters, who came and went without forming the bonds that family should nurture. It was as if I were becoming a stranger in my own family's story. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe she was overwhelmed. Maybe she thought I deserved rest and relaxation. But the sharp edge of her words lingered in my thoughts, cutting deeper each day. I wondered if my age was truly the barrier, or if there was something else, something unspoken, that had created this rift. There was one afternoon when I arrived unannounced at their house, hoping to spend a few hours with the children. The door was answered by Claire, her smile tight and forced. Mom, we're a bit busy today, she said, stepping back to block my way. Maybe another time. I caught a glimpse of my grandchildren peeking from behind the curtains, their eyes wide but hesitant. It was a moment of heartbreak that no words could mend. The irony was that I had always believed family was a sanctuary, a place where love transcended age and circumstance. Yet here I was, feeling like an outsider, unwanted and unneeded. The house that once echoed with my laughter and stories now seemed cold and unfamiliar. I reached out to Mark, my son, hoping he would understand my pain. But even he seemed caught in the middle, torn between his wife's wishes and my silent suffering. His voice was gentle but distant when he said, Mom, Claire just wants what's best for the kids. Maybe we should respect that. Respect? I thought bitterly. Is it respect to be cast aside like yesterday's news? My heart ached not just for myself but for my grandchildren. I worried about the missed moments, the bedtime stories, the hugs, the lessons passed down from one generation to the next. I feared that the growing distance would create a chasm too wide to bridge. One evening, as I sat alone in my quiet home, I scrolled through the family's social media pages. Photos of Claire with the children filled the screen, smiling faces, playful poses, all captured without me. The younger caregivers were featured prominently, their arms around my grandchildren, while I was nowhere to be seen. Each picture was a silent reminder of my exclusion. I realized then that this wasn't just about age, it was about being pushed aside, about losing my place in the family circle. It was about watching from afar as the people I loved built a life that no longer had room for me. Still, I held on to hope. Hope that one day the walls would come down, that the bonds of blood and love would prevail over hurtful words and misunderstandings. But for now, I was left with the ache of distance and the painful truth that sometimes, even family can make you feel like a stranger. Days turned into weeks, and the growing silence between us was deafening. Invitations stopped coming, phone calls became infrequent, and the warmth I once felt was replaced by a cold formality. I found myself hesitating before reaching out, afraid of another rejection, another reminder that I was no longer considered part of the inner circle. Yet, despite the hurt, I never stopped loving my grandchildren. I dreamed of the day I could hold them close again, to share in their joys and challenges, to be the grandmother I had always wanted to be. But those dreams seemed to drift further away with every passing day. I kept myself busy, volunteering at the local library, attending community events, and reconnecting with old friends. Still, the emptiness lingered, especially when I caught myself imagining the little voices calling me grandma, the tiny hands reaching for mine. Those moments were bittersweet, reminders of what was lost and what might never be regained. One afternoon, I mustered the courage to send Claire a message, not to plead or argue, but simply to express my feelings. I wrote, "I love you and the children. I'm here whenever you need me." Her reply was brief and polite, but distant, "Thank you. We're managing fine." That was the moment I understood the reality of our new dynamic. My role as a grandmother was being redefined, not by love or choice, but by circumstance and distance. And though it pained me deeply, I had to accept that sometimes love isn't enough to keep a family close. As I sat by the window, watching the world outside, I reminded myself that this was only the beginning. There would be many more days of waiting, of hoping, and perhaps, one day, of healing. But for now, I was left holding on to memories and the faintest glimmer of a connection that once was. The hardest part was not the rejection itself but the quiet realization that my place in their lives was slipping away, pushed aside by fear, misunderstanding, and the relentless march of time. And in that silence, I found a new kind of loneliness, one that only a grandmother can know when she's told she's too old to care. The silence that settled between Claire and me was heavy, thick with unspoken words and wounded feelings. After her blunt dismissal, I found myself retreating, not out of anger, but a deep, aching hurt that made reaching out feel like stepping into a storm. I stopped offering my help, stopped calling as frequently, and gradually withdrew into a quiet corner of my own life. It was as if the very act of stepping back was an act of survival, a way to protect my heart from further rejection. I told myself I was respecting Claire's wishes, honoring the boundaries she set. But beneath that rationalization was a painful truth. I felt invisible, sidelined, and increasingly isolated from the family I cherished. My home became a refuge, but also a lonely place where I wrestled with the gnawing sense that I was losing my place in my grandchildren's lives. From a distance, I watched as Claire struggled with the overwhelming demands of parenthood. The brief glimpses I caught, through social media updates, occasional family texts, and whispered conversations, revealed a woman trying to juggle work, housework, and childcare with little breathing room. I saw the exhaustion etched on her face during the rare video calls, the way her smile faltered when the children cried, and the hurried tone in her voice when she spoke of her day. I wanted to reach out, to offer a steady hand and a warm embrace, but the wall she had built between us felt impenetrable. So I stayed back, silent and watchful, torn between wanting to help and respecting the distance she demanded. It was hard not to feel conflicted. I was proud of Claire for managing so much on her own, yet I worried about the toll it was taking on her and, more importantly, on the children. I feared that without the support of family, the kind of support that only a grandmother can provide, they might miss out on the stability, love, and wisdom that come from generations intertwined. But the more I watched, the more I realized that the pain of exclusion was not mine alone. Claire's struggles were real, and perhaps she saw me not as a source of comfort, but as an added complication. Maybe, in her mind, my age was less about being too old to babysit, and more about a fear that I wouldn't understand the pressures she faced in today's world. One afternoon, I sat by the window, clutching a photo of my 2 grandchildren, bright-eyed, innocent, and unaware of the distance growing between us. I remembered the countless times I had held them close, whispered lullabies in the quiet night, and watched them take their first steps. Those memories were bittersweet now, a reminder of what once was and what might be slipping away. I found myself replaying conversations in my mind, wondering if there was something I had said or done to push Claire further away. Was my eagerness mistaken for interference? Had I failed to recognize her need for independence? The questions circled endlessly, but the answers remained elusive. Despite the hurt, I refused to let bitterness take root. I understood that family dynamics are complicated, woven with threads of love, fear, pride, and pain. I reminded myself that Claire was navigating a difficult path, and perhaps her rejection was less about me and more about her own struggles. Even so, the isolation was palpable. I missed the laughter of my grandchildren echoing through my home, the warmth of shared meals, the simple joy of being part of their everyday lives. I missed the feeling of belonging, the unspoken understanding that, no matter what, family stands together. I tried to fill the void with small acts of kindness elsewhere, volunteering at the community center, joining a book club, and reconnecting with old friends. These moments brought fleeting comfort, but they couldn't replace the ache of absence. There were days when I caught myself scrolling through Claire's social media again, watching the snapshots of her life, playdates, birthday parties, quiet moments with the children. Each photo was a window into a world I longed to be part of, yet was kept at arm's length. I noticed the exhaustion in her eyes, the tight smiles, the occasional candid moments of vulnerability. It was hard not to feel a mix of empathy and sorrow. I wanted to tell her that I understood, that I was here whenever she needed me. But the fear of rejection held me back. I worried that reaching out might reopen wounds or push her further away. One evening, I received a brief text from Claire, "Things are a bit hectic right now. Hope you're well." It was polite but distant, a reminder of the growing gulf between us. I replied with a simple, "Thinking of you all," hoping to keep the lines open without pressing too hard. The days turned into weeks, and the quiet withdrawal settled into a new rhythm. I became an observer rather than a participant, watching from afar as my family moved forward without me. It was a strange and painful role to inhabit, the grandmother who loved deeply but was kept at a distance. Yet, even in that silence, I held on to hope. Hope that someday the barriers would come down, that Claire would see me not as a burden or an outdated relic but as a source of strength and unconditional love. I longed for the chance to prove that age was not a limitation but a wellspring of wisdom and care. I reminded myself that sometimes love means stepping back, giving space when it's needed most, and trusting that the bonds of family are resilient enough to endure hardship. I clung to the belief that patience and understanding could heal the rift, even if the path forward was uncertain. Still, the nights were the hardest. When the house was quiet and the memories of laughter and warmth filled the empty rooms, I felt the weight of absence pressing down on me. I longed to pick up the phone, to hear the children's voices, to be part of their world again. But I stayed silent, respecting Claire's unspoken wishes, even as it broke my heart. I kept a journal, pouring my thoughts and emotions onto the pages, trying to make sense of the tangled feelings inside. Writing became a balm, a way to process the pain without burdening those I loved. In those quiet moments, I promised myself that I would remain ready to step back in whenever Claire needed me, to offer my hands and heart without hesitation. I vowed not to let bitterness or pride create walls where love could grow. For now, I was a distant presence, watching and waiting, hoping that the day would come when the quiet withdrawal would end, and the bonds of family would be renewed. Until then, I held on to love, the kind of love that endures distance, withstands silence, and waits patiently for a chance to heal. The phone rang just as the sun was setting, casting long shadows across my quiet living room. I glanced at the screen and saw Claire's name flashing insistently. My heart skipped a beat, a mixture of hope and apprehension flooding through me. It had been weeks since we last spoke, and now, in the middle of the evening, her call felt urgent. "Mom, I don't know what to do," Claire's voice trembled when I answered. There was an edge of desperation I hadn't heard before. "I've been so overwhelmed with work, the kids, and everything. Today, I ended up in the ER. I'm okay now, but I can't manage the kids for the next few days. Mark's out of town for work, and I'm scared, Mom. Can you help?" Her words hit me like a wave, part relief, part heartbreak. Relief that she had reached out, that she needed me. Heartbreak because it had taken a crisis for her to do so, after all the distance and silence. But there was no hesitation in my voice. Of course, Claire. I'll be there as soon as I can. I gathered my things with a flurry of nervous energy, the familiar rhythm of caregiving stirring a mixture of joy and anxiety in my chest. The thought of holding my grandchildren again, of stepping back into their world, filled me with a bittersweet warmth. But I also feared the fragile state of our relationship, unsure how my presence would be received after so long apart. When I arrived at their home, the scene that greeted me was one of quiet chaos. Claire looked pale, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, and the children clung to her as if sensing her vulnerability. The house, normally bustling with laughter and life, felt subdued, weighed down by the tension of recent days. "Thank you for coming," Claire said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to ask, but I had no choice. I smiled gently, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. "You don't have to thank me. I'm here for you, always." Over the next few days, I stepped fully into the role I had longed for: caregiver, confidant, grandmother. I prepared meals, read bedtime stories, and soothed tears with gentle words and warm embraces. The children's laughter returned, filling the rooms once more, and I felt a spark of the connection we had lost. Claire, too, began to relax in my presence. I saw glimpses of the woman I remembered, the sister to my son, the mother to my grandchildren, burdened but resilient. She confided in me about the pressures she faced balancing work and motherhood, the guilt she carried for not being able to do it all perfectly. "I'm sorry for pushing you away," she admitted one afternoon as we sat in the kitchen, the children playing quietly nearby. I was scared. I thought I had to do this on my own, that asking for help was a weakness. Her words struck a chord deep within me. I reached across the table, taking her hand in mine. "You're not alone, Claire. None of us can do it all alone. That's what family is for, to lean on each other when things get hard." For the first time in months, the walls between us began to crumble, replaced by understanding and a fragile trust. I realized that Claire's rejection had been less about me and more about her own struggles, the fear of losing control, the pressure to be perfect, and the shame of admitting she needed help. As I cared for the children, I also cared for Claire's spirit, offering a safe space where she could breathe and be herself without judgment. I reminded her that age was not a barrier to love or support, that my experience was a resource, not a hindrance. One evening, after the children were asleep, Claire and I sat together in the living room, sipping tea and sharing stories. She laughed softly at a memory I recounted from Mark's childhood, her eyes shining with warmth and gratitude. "I missed this," she whispered. "I missed having you close." I nodded, feeling tears prick my eyes. "Me too, Claire. Me too." The days that followed were a delicate dance of rebuilding, a slow, steady reclaiming of the bond that had frayed but never broken. I saw Claire grow stronger, more confident in accepting help, and more open to letting me into her life. Mark returned from his trip to find a home filled with renewed warmth and laughter. He hugged me tightly, whispering his thanks for stepping in when we were most needed. It was a moment of healing for all of us, a reminder that family is not defined by distance or time apart, but by the willingness to come together when it matters most. Through the crisis, I learned that sometimes the walls we build to protect ourselves need to be broken down by moments of vulnerability and trust. Claire's call for help was a turning point, not just for her, but for all of us. I realized that love isn't always easy or perfect. It can be messy, complicated, and painful. But it endures, especially when we choose to put aside pride and fear, to open our hearts and offer our hands. As I tucked the children into bed on the third night, their soft breaths steady and peaceful, I felt a sense of purpose and belonging that had been missing for far too long. I was no longer just an observer from the sidelines, I was part of their lives again. The road ahead was still uncertain, and the wounds of the past would take time to heal fully. But in that moment, surrounded by the quiet comfort of family, I knew we had taken the first crucial steps toward mending what had been broken. And sometimes, that's all it takes: the courage to reach out, the grace to accept help, and the willingness to rebuild trust, one small moment at a time. The days that followed my return to Claire's home unfolded like the slow thawing of winter ice, gradual, tentative, but unmistakably real. I found myself woven back into the fabric of their lives, a thread that had frayed but never truly broken. Each morning began with the soft sounds of little feet padding down the hallway, the eager voices of my grandchildren calling out "Grandma." A balm to the wounds of the past months. I took on the role of caregiver with renewed purpose. The familiar routine of preparing breakfast, packing lunches, and dressing tiny bodies was both comforting and healing. The children's laughter filled the rooms again, their smiles wide and genuine as they clung to me with a trust that felt as precious as it was fragile. Claire's transformation was subtle but profound. The tension that once shadowed her face softened, replaced by moments of calm and genuine gratitude. I saw her relax in my presence, her defenses lowering as she allowed herself to lean on me. The walls she had built began to crumble, brick by brick, replaced by a fragile but growing trust. One afternoon, as I helped the children with their homework, Claire joined us at the kitchen table. She watched quietly for a moment before speaking, her voice steady but vulnerable. "Mom, I want to thank you for everything you're doing. I realize now how much I underestimated your strength and patience." Her words touched me deeply. We all have our strengths, Claire. Sometimes it just takes time to see them in each other. She smiled, a genuine warmth lighting her eyes. I'd been so focused on what I thought I had to do alone, I forgot that family is about sharing burdens, not carrying them by yourself. That conversation marked a turning point. Claire and I began to talk more openly, bridging the gaps that distance and misunderstanding had created. We shared fears, hopes, and frustrations, unloading the weight that had been silently pressing down on both our hearts. I noticed a change not only in Claire but in my son, Mark, too. He became more present, more engaged, and more appreciative of the support that was finally flowing freely between us. Family dinners returned, filled with laughter and conversation, where stories were shared and bonds were strengthened. With time, I became an integral part of the household routine. I was there for school drop-offs and pickups, doctor's appointments, and bedtime rituals. I found joy in the little moments, tying shoelaces, wiping tears, celebrating small victories. These acts of care were more than chores, they were threads weaving us closer together. The children, once tentative, now sought me out eagerly. They whispered secrets in my ear, asked for extra hugs, and clung to me when the world felt overwhelming. Their trust was a precious gift, one I vowed never to take for granted. Claire's perception of my age shifted as well. What she once saw as a limitation became a source of wisdom and stability. She began to recognize the value of my experience, the depth of my patience, and the unconditional love I offered. Our relationship evolved from one of tension and distance to partnership and mutual respect. One evening, as we sat together after putting the children to bed, Claire confided in me about the challenges she still faced balancing work and motherhood. "It's not easy," she admitted. "But having you here makes it bearable. It reminds me I'm not alone." I reached out and squeezed her hand. "You're stronger than you know, Claire. And together, we're stronger still." Through these moments, I learned the power of open communication. We talked not just about logistics but about feelings, acknowledging misunderstandings, expressing regrets, and offering forgiveness. It was not always easy, sometimes emotions ran high, and old wounds surfaced. But with patience and honesty, we navigated those storms, emerging with a deeper connection. I also saw the healing ripple outward. The atmosphere in the house lightened, the children flourished, and the family unit grew more resilient. It was a reminder that love, when nurtured, can mend even the deepest fractures. Reflecting on this journey, I realized how crucial it was to approach relationships with empathy and grace. Claire and I had both made mistakes, but we were willing to learn and grow. That willingness, to listen, to forgive, to trust, was the foundation of our renewed bond. I found myself cherishing the moments of quiet companionship as much as the busy days filled with activity. Whether we were sharing a cup of tea, folding laundry, or simply sitting side by side, there was a comfort in knowing we were rebuilding something meaningful. The children's smiles and laughter became the soundtrack of my days, a testament to the healing power of family. I felt a profound sense of fulfillment in knowing that I was making a difference in their lives, offering stability and love that would shape their future. Yet, amidst the joy, I remained mindful of the fragility of this newfound peace. Relationships require continual care, and I was determined to nurture ours with patience and understanding. I knew there would be challenges ahead, but I felt ready to face them, bolstered by the strength of our renewed connection. In embracing this role once more, I discovered that age does not diminish one's capacity to love, to support, or to be essential. Instead, it brings perspective, a deeper appreciation for the bonds that hold us together and the resilience needed to mend what has been broken. As I tucked the children into bed each night, I felt a quiet gratitude for the chance to be part of their lives again. Their trust, their laughter, and their love were the greatest gifts I could receive. And as Claire and I continued to heal our relationship, I held on to the belief that family, despite its challenges, remains a source of strength and hope, a place where wounds can heal and love can flourish if we are willing to listen, to forgive, and to embrace one another fully. The house was alive with warmth again, the kind of warmth that seeps into your bones and settles deep in your heart. I found myself not just a visitor but an essential part of the daily rhythm, woven into the fabric of their lives in a way I had longed for but feared might never come. Watching my grandchildren grow, sharing in their triumphs and trials, and being embraced by Claire and Mark in a new, genuine way was a gift I cherished every single day. Our family dynamic had shifted, transformed by patience, forgiveness, and the quiet work of rebuilding trust. No longer was I the sidelined grandmother, an afterthought dismissed because of age or circumstance. Instead, I was a partner in caregiving, a source of stability, and a steady presence in the children's lives. The laughter that filled the rooms, the shared meals around the table, the bedtime stories whispered in the soft glow of the nightlight, all these moments were threads knitting us closer together. I saw how Claire and Mark had grown, too. Their respect for each other deepened, and their appreciation for my role blossomed into heartfelt gratitude. They learned to lean on me not just out of necessity but because they recognized the strength and love I brought to our family. We moved beyond past hurts, embracing a future built on mutual support and understanding. The grandchildren thrived in this renewed environment. They blossomed with the confidence that comes from feeling loved and secure, their eyes shining with the innocence of childhood and the comfort of belonging. I treasured the small victories, first steps, first words, school achievements, and the daily joys of watching their personalities unfold. Through it all, I reflected on the journey that had brought us here, the pain of rejection, the quiet withdrawal, the crisis that forced us to reach out, and the slow, steady work of healing. It was a path marked by challenges, but also by resilience and love. I realized that the strength of family lies not in perfection but in the willingness to forgive, to communicate openly, and to embrace each other's flaws and strengths. The experience taught me that age is not a barrier to connection but a bridge to wisdom and patience. It reminded me that every generation has something valuable to offer, and that the bonds between grandparents and grandchildren are among the most precious and enduring. As I sat at the kitchen table one afternoon, watching Claire and Mark interact with the children, I felt a profound sense of peace. The distance that once divided us had been replaced by closeness and trust. Our family was whole again, not because the past had been erased, but because we had chosen to move forward together. I thought about the lessons learned, the importance of patience when faced with misunderstanding, the courage to step back when needed, and the grace to be ready to step forward when called upon. These lessons were not just for me but for anyone who has faced the ache of estrangement within a family. I hoped that our story might encourage others to cherish the bonds that span generations, to recognize that love can endure even the deepest wounds, and that healing is possible when we choose empathy over pride. There were still moments of challenge, of course, times when old tensions surfaced or when the demands of life tested our newfound harmony. But these moments no longer defined us. Instead, they became opportunities to practice forgiveness and to reaffirm our commitment to one another. I became a witness to the beauty of multi-generational love, how it enriches lives, offers perspective, and creates a legacy that extends beyond a single lifetime. I saw how the children thrived not just because of their parents' love but because of the presence of a grandmother who stood beside them, offering strength and unwavering support. As the years passed, I watched my grandchildren grow into kind, confident individuals, shaped in part by the love and lessons I was privileged to share. I took quiet pride in knowing that, despite the rocky path, we had forged a bond that would carry them through life's challenges. The family gatherings became occasions filled with joy and gratitude, where stories of the past mingled with dreams for the future. I sat among them, no longer on the sidelines but at the heart of our shared story. And in those moments, I understood that sometimes the best revenge against pain and rejection is not confrontation or bitterness but living well, choosing honesty over manipulation, forgiveness over resentment, and love over distance. As I watched my grandchildren laugh and play, their faces radiant with happiness, I felt a deep, enduring hope. A hope that family, with all its complexities and imperfections, remains one of life's greatest gifts, a source of strength, healing, and endless love. If you loved the story, like the video and subscribe.